let's talk about subwoofers a little bit. The biggest one I've gotten recently so far is a 21-inch sub. I'm not gonna say who it's from, but I had some issues with it, hence why you guys haven't seen the review yet. But, you know, at a certain size, you know, I would think that a 21-inch subwoofer wouldn't distort or have any issues, anything like that. So I figured maybe it was like a limiter issue. But there are limitations on size and sound quality, and I wanted Geoffrey to touch upon how Excursion helps with getting this as well, because I've been using, you know, subwoofers that use PA drivers, which you can tell it lacks much Excursion. How important is that?
Well, these PA drivers, they're not designed for ultimate Excursion, they're designed for SPL, because they're designed for rock concerts. There is no rock concert in the world that goes below 35 hertz. So they're not designed to basically extend below 35 hertz, because their resonance frequencies usually, even if it's a 21-inch, with a large Excursion, there is no PA subwoofer in the world that goes beyond...
Hold on, I wish you guys could feel that right now, because we're feeling it in the other room, the 80-inch. But go ahead.
Yeah. So anyway, I mean, a 21-inch, even if it has a very high Excursion, has maybe 12 to 15 millimeter linear Excursion. That means X max. And that means basically one way. So the peak to peak linear would be then maximum about 30 millimeter. It's a little bit more than 1 inch linear travel.
Yeah.
And of course, that's basically the air it can move, and that moved air, basically you can calculate in cubic feet, cubic inches, cubic liter, whatever, you know. And so to give you just a perspective here, a good 21-inch PA woofer can move about maybe 2 to 3 liters. That's a tenth of a cubic foot, right? Our 80-inch can move with half an Excursion, basically X max, 90 liter. That's 3 cubic feet, right? Yeah. Just to give you I mean, that means basically peak to peak Excursion of the 80-inch we have here, you move 6 cubic feet. So you can put it in perspective how many 21-inch woofers you would need. But that's not the only secret here. So, I mean, yeah, people out there say, of course, then I can take, for example, 20 or 30 21-inch woofers and get the same as a single 80-inch. Yes, that's true, but there is not a single 21-inch woofer that has a resonance frequency of 8 hertz like our 80-inch. And that's very significant because below the natural resonance frequency, a normal woofer creates a lot of harmonic distortion. And not only that, it's very inefficient, right? Below resonance frequency usually should not use a subwoofer because it becomes very inefficient. And you should have also a large enough enclosure to be able to reproduce this, because I mean I talked before about the iron law of Hofmann's, you know, and that's exactly what he's talking about. You need to have a very large enclosure to have very high efficiency in very low frequencies. Even if you put a 12-inch woofer and want to reproduce 10 hertz or 8 hertz, it needs to be as big as the enclosure we do for the 80-inch today, because it doesn't matter if you put a 12-inch or an 80-inch woofer in the same enclosure, the enclosure itself has the same behavior. Yeah? So when I use a 21-inch woofer and make it force basically play down to 8 hertz, it still needs to be put in the same enclosure.
Yeah.
So that means whether I use a single 80 that can move a lot more air and put it in that enclosure, or I put a 21 in the same enclosure, but then have basically, for example, 20 21s being put in the same enclosure 20 times, I need a lot more space.
Right.
Now, this 80, just to give you a perspective, is the enclosure is made out of concrete, weighs 15 tons, and
it looks like a studio apartment.
Exactly. Yeah. And has the size of 33 cubic meters. That's put in cubic feet. How much is that? Times 11, I think, about. So almost 400 cubic feet of enclosure size. So that means when I use a 21 inch, I need a 400 cubic feet enclosure to go down to about 8 hertz times 20. So nobody has the space to be able to do that. And that's why we basically design what we design, an 80-inch woofer that has a sensitivity or actually an efficiency of 105 dB, 1 watt, 1 meter. Just let that sink.
Yeah.
And a power handling of more than 10 kilowatts. I mean, we run it now with a 10 kilowatt amplifier. And it can, like I mentioned before already, reproduce more than 145 dB SPL in 1 meter, maximum SPL, and then at about 30 hertz it starts rolling off. And when we look at other factors, for example, now speed, a lot of people say, okay, a big woofer cannot be fast. Actually, the opposite is true, because when I look at my group delay of my 80-inch in that large enclosure, I have a group delay of merely 2.5 milliseconds at 20 hertz. Now, you put a 21-inch woofer in an enclosure, yeah, that has a group delay of usually about 20 to 30 milliseconds. Yeah. If you now measure the group delay of, let's say, what people perceive as a fast, or what people say is a fast woofer, let's say a 12-inch or a 10-inch, right? It has a group delay of literally probably 30 to 40 milliseconds. Yeah. So which is the faster woofer then? The 80 or the 10 or 12 or 15 or 18 or 21?
Right.
It's the 80.
Yeah.
Because we always need to put the frequency in perspective and the enclosure in perspective. Yeah. So in the end of the day, the enclosure defines the group delay, not necessarily only the woofer. But this woofer has a native Q, that means a QTS of 0.19. 0.19 is an extremely fast woofer, right? With a very, very strong motor, with a very strong force, basically. We have a 21-inch voice coil in this 80-inch woofer. 21-inch, that's this size of a voice coil, right? So we have 40 kilograms, no, that's actually more here. That's the 50-inch has a 40 kilogram neodymium. So I think we have about 60 or 70 kilograms of pure neodymium N50 in the 80-inch as a motor. So you can literally lift a car with that motor.
And he's got this crossed over at, I thought he would cross this over at like 30 hertz, just pick up the infrasonics.
Right.
But he told me he's got it crossed over at like 120 hertz.
Right.
Which is something I would figure you'd cross over like a 12-inch sub at to get the upper mid-range and all that. But he's actually got an 80-inch, and a lot of people think that a larger sub, you probably shouldn't cross it over that high because there's a lot of slop. But listen, if it's getting 2 milliseconds, I mean, this is a gigantic quick sub. Apparently, I mean, I'm gonna spend some time myself and listen to it, but tell them why size doesn't matter when it comes, that it doesn't matter when it comes to being quick and responsive, because he invented this gigantic 80-inch sub, and it's musical, to say the least.
The enclosure is really the secret, next to the driver design, of course. If the enclosure doesn't suit the tuning frequency, or basically the low cutoff frequency you want to achieve, then you cannot really reproduce it, even though you can reproduce it. Don't get me wrong. Of course you can, like I said, reproduce 1 hertz with a tweeter even. That's not an issue. So even, somebody always asks, okay, so how low can it go? Each woofer can go as low as you want, but does it matter? Has it a significance? Do you feel it? Does it have an SPL output that is measurable? Is it fast enough to follow the electrical impulse? You know, I think these are the meaningful questions you really need to ask. And that's where most of the woofers fall short. Because when you look at one thing, cone area, let's take an example. You take a woofer, you want to reproduce 130 dB SPL, right? So a 12-inch woofer can reproduce 130 dB SPL at 100 hertz. Yeah, that's possible, no problem. But then, even a 12-inch already struggles to reproduce 130 dB at 50 hertz. Or maybe you still can do that. But now, you go one octave down again to 25 hertz. Even, I think, a 21-inch woofer already would struggle to reproduce 30 hertz at 130 dB, right? Now, the problem is, in physics, you need to quadruple the cone area to have the same SPL. That means you need 4 21s to reproduce then at 12.5 hertz, right? 130 dB SPL. But now, when you want to go lower than 12.5 hertz, let's say half, 7 point something hertz, you would need to then have 16 21-inch woofers, right? And if you then want to extend even below that, you need 64, right?
Yeah.
And so it's really a quadratic function of cone size.
This is a tasty beer. I don't know what kind of beer this is, but it's tasty. They have a little bar area in this whole compound here. And also check out the video where I'm going to do myself. I'm going to review the 80-inch subwoofer, so you guys be on the lookout for that one and the whole system as a whole. And also they have an amazing micro LED display as well, which projectors, look out. This might be the demise of projectors because this screen looks freaking amazing. Probably the best display I've seen. And of course, the best subwoofer I've heard. Fantastic, man. Stop down here, Arled, down here in Germany. I'll leave the address down below in the video's description. Check it out. As always, guys, thanks for watching. Thank you, Geoffrey, for joining me for a couple of cocktails. Visit the Ascendo.com website, like, share, and subscribe, and we'll see you again in the next video.